This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Our goal with our videos is to empower you to be able to do the repairs on your own and save a whole lot of money and also get that great feeling of having fixed it by yourself. Today we have a BOSCH dishwasher that isn't getting a high enough water level when it fills, and here's the new fill valve we're going to put in. So when we take a look, the water level is only not getting even up to anywhere near the filter handle, and when we turn it on we don't hear very much water splashing around, and also the water never heats up, and it just isn't cleaning the dishes. It's not even melting all the soap, so we know that the water level is definitely too low. And to replace it, fill valve is pretty easy. Sometimes they get clogged up at the filter, and sometimes they just stop opening. This one we can tell for sure it isn't opening because the spray arms don't even have enough water pressure to move. So we're going to go through a procedure on how to replace it. Just for fun though, we're going to add some water manually by just filling a pan and adding enough water in until the water reaches the top of the plastic filter handle. And that's how much water should come in when the fill valve is working properly. So we added that much water, we close the door, and we give it a try, and we notice it was working great. So we know it is a low water level. This is the model or the part number for the new fill valve. So I've removed the kick plate at the bottom, and next thing I'm going to do is take off the fill line here. I've already turned off the water underneath the sink, so there's no water coming in. And I'm going to use my pliers to loosen it up. I opened the door a little bit to give me a better angle. Put a paper towel down there to catch any water that might come out. So I've got off the fill valve, or the fill line. I'm taking a pair of vice grips. I'm loosening the brass elbow that's on there. Just going to spin that off using a tool, and once it's loose I'll spin it off by hand. So this whole thing can be done without taking the dishwasher out of the cabinet, which is really nice. You could really easily do this within 20 minutes and just need a few tools to do it. So now I can just use my hands to spin off this brass elbow. A little bit of water comes out, making sure there's no junk caught in there. And then I'm using a Torx 15 bit to take out two Torx 15 screws that are holding the fill valve to the plastic frame. And then I'm going to push up on this fill line to get it out of the way, and I'm going to lift up on the fill valve and pull it toward me, and then I'm going to disconnect 3 wires. There's 1 green wire and 2 purple wires bringing power to the fill valve. Make sure again you have it unplugged, because you can get a pretty good zap at this point. So we got those off, and now I'm going to remove the hose that's hooked to the fill valve. So I'll use a pair of vice grips to clamp down on the spring clamp, and I'm going to move the spring clamp away from me by about maybe 1.5 to 2 inches. This part's a little tricky. You want to wiggle it, push it back until you can get that spring clamp off. At this point you want to grab the hose securely and pull back on the fill valve. Don't pull the hose towards you though, because you don't want to disconnect it from inside the dishwasher. Just support the hose and then wiggle and pull the fill valve towards you until it lets go. There we go. So we're looking in there and we can see a lot of junk caught in the filter. It could be the fill valve was actually okay, but it had so much junk that it couldn't let enough water come in the right amount of time. So we're putting some new Teflon tape on the threads of the brass elbow. That only needs to be done on the threads that go into the fill valve, but the ones that go to the fill line don't need those Teflon thread tape. So get that on, and we're going to spin the elbow into the fill valve by hand. Once we get it tight, I'm going to lock a pair of vice grips down on the frame of the fill valve, and then using a crescent wrench, I'm going to spin that elbow a few more turns. I want to kind of think where that fill valve should end up to hook up to the fill line most easily. So it should be turned to my right. There we go. So that's going to work great. So I'm going to grab the hose here, I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to push the new fill valve into the hose. And then I'll clamp down on the spring clamp with the vice grips. And I get the spring clamp back on, and then I'll release the vice grips so that hose is on there really tight. Then I'm just going to add the green wire back onto the ground connection, which is on the metal frame of the fill valve, and the two purple ones will go onto the terminals of the fill valve solenoid. Make sure they're on securely. Then I'm going to go ahead and push the fill valve back into the plastic frame, kind of wiggle it in there, let it sit in position, and we'll add those two Torx 15 screws back in to secure it. You're almost done. On some of the more modern Bosch models, you have to get the dishwasher out of the cabinet to do this, but on these older ones, it's easy to do without removing anything. So we're going to put those two Torx 15 screws back in. Then we're going to carefully thread the fill tube back on. Make sure it goes on easily, and then we'll use the pliers to do a few more turns. I've opened the door to give me, again, a little more room to work. I want to make sure it's on there really tight. And then I'll go underneath the sink and I'll turn the valve back on all the way to the left, fully on. I'll plug it back in and we'll give it a test. I want to make sure that the water comes in during the fill cycle and fills up as high as almost to the top of the round plastic filter handle. If it is that high, there's enough water pressure to clean the dishes and also enough to activate the heater switch. And you know the heater switch is working because after about 20 minutes when you open it up, you'll get a big plume of steam coming out. Just making sure there's no water leaking down here. Looks good. So we can hear the water sloshing around a lot better now. And we can see that water is dripping from everywhere. That's good. You can see that the water is as high as the round plastic handle. And then looking in here again, we can tell that there's a lot of junk caught in that filter. This is just stuff that comes in from the water line from the house water pressure, and the filter catches some of the junk that comes in. I'm putting the kick toe panel back in by adding two Torx 15 screws. And that's about it. This usually happens at about maybe the 5th or 6th year of service with your Bosch dishwasher. Again, easy to do, won't take you long at all. You can see a lot of crud was in that filter. So this did the trick. I hope this works also for your Bosch dishwasher. Thanks so much for washing, and please subscribe when you get a chance.